Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Like My Garden. Okay, so it's just about time now we can start to pot up these Calabrese. Now, with Calabrese, they are quite fast grown. Any brassica really is quite fast grown when they're young. So it's important you have the right sort of compost. You most certainly need a good fertile compost to get, you know, a really good solid start on your plants. They don't typically have a fantastic root system on any brassica really. So, you know, the size of the plant compared to the root ball is possibly the most extreme of all vegetables really. So you need to, you know, sort of make sure whatever roots you have got are in good quality sort of compost so they get the maximum amount of goodness. So what I'm going to do, as you can see, they're about this size now. They're about kind of 1.5 inches, 2 inches high. You can let them get slightly bigger than this, but you know, this is really the ideal time to get it, because what you don't want to do is disturb the roots too much. So with a lollipop stick or something like that, just to start off, what you want to do is just go in at the side of the plant like that and just lift the plant up, and what you're hoping to get is like the root ball, if you like. So just pull it out gently, not disturbing the roots. And if you let them get too much bigger, what will happen is all the roots will get sort of matted in together with each other, and what you'll find is you know, as you're pulling them out, you damage the roots. So basically you put them in pretty much at the same level as you did before. What you want to do is get the compost reasonably firm. As I say, you know, brassicas like the ground to be reasonably firm. So all I've got here, these are the sort of 3-4 inch pots. That's sort of ideal size for any brassica really, until you put it into the ground. And all I'm doing here is just putting the lollipop stick underneath. As soon as you've got the first lot under, you can basically just put your finger underneath like that. Now, if a clump of them come out like that, what you want to do is very, very gently pull them apart like that to make sure that you get the least amount of sort of root damage. That's the important bit. Obviously make sure they're upright like that, and then just firm it in. Be as gentle as you possibly can do with the roots. You don't need to firm it right by the plant, but just make sure the compost around like that. Now all you need to do is do this now, as I say, the earlier you can do it the better. Obviously when you separate them like that, what you want to do really is separate the ground. What you don't want to do is touch the stem or the leaves. But if you have got some that are close together like that, just grab the leaves and just pull them apart very gently like that, and you'll get the little plantlets out. Always remember, with a plant, the roots can regenerate. The leaves can regenerate, but if you break the stem, the plant's you know, sort of pretty much done really. So, you know, when you're pulling seedlings apart, always do it by either the root or the leaves. Try not to do it by the stem. So, as I've got quite a few here, I can sort of cherry pick the best plants really. You know, there's a lot more here than possibly I'll need. Now, I'll probably pot all of these up anyway. But what you want to do is make sure, you know, that you've got more than enough. What you can get with some brassicas is they tend to, I don't know, they tend to twist. And I tend to reject those plants that do that, because they don't typically grow so well. So it's worth having a few sort of spare, sort of 10% more or so than you were intending to put in the ground. So just in case any of them do go like that, you know, you can always reject them. And always, you know, it's always nice to give some plants away to your neighbouring either gardeners or allotmenteers, because you know, swapping plants is always a good way to try out a new vegetable. If somebody's got a few spare of something you've never grown before, you know, and you can put them in your plot and you can try them out without the expense of buying the seeds and sort of growing them for the first time. So it's always nice to share any excess that you know, sort of any sort of plants that you've got that are sort of extra, if you like. So all I'm doing is sticking my finger in there to make a hole, dropping the plant down inside the hole there. They are going in slightly deeper than they were in the seed tray, but that doesn't really matter. Ideally you want to get them at the same height, but if they go slightly deeper, half inch or so deeper, that doesn't really matter. Right, so I'll just continue to do this. Now you want to keep these in the greenhouse obviously until they're about 9 inches or so high, and then as soon as they've developed themselves to that kind of height, you can then sort of plant them out into the ground. As I say, you know, brassicas are reasonably robust little plants, so you can put them out even if there is sort of danger of a frost, if you like, so you can put them out before the end of May really. But you know, this year, exactly like I did last year, what I'm going to do is grow a succession of calabrese or broccoli. It's one vegetable that you know, my family eat, and you know, you can potentially get 3 or possibly 4 crops in you know, a succession of crops in 1 year out of the same piece of ground, or you know, so you can really cash in. The other good thing about broccoli as well is if you do have an excess of it, you can always chop it up and freeze it. It does freeze reasonably well without blanching it or anything like that. All you do is just chop it up and then bob it in your you know, put it up into portion sizes if you like, and then put it in the freezer, and it'll freeze quite well. Then all you need to do is, as you're cooking your meals, just take it out, take the bag out, put it in some boiling water, and then you can cook it up. So you know, it's quite an easy vegetable to store if you have an excess of it. If you do grow an F1 variety, they're all likely to you know, sort of come together. If you grow a variety which is not F1, you're more likely to get, you know, a succession of plants you know, sort of finishing. But if you do grow an F1 variety, they're all likely to come in the same week or the same kind of 2 weeks as each other. Okay, so when you pricked out all of the calabrese, it should look like that. Now they will, when you first water them, flop over a little bit, but they'll soon sort of pick themselves up. So I've ended up with, what's that, 36, around 50 plants there. Just over 50 plants, which will be more than enough for me. Obviously, any plants that didn't look quite right, or they were twisted at the bottom or anything, obviously I've rejected those. So I've only potted up the ones that are obviously healthy. So that's what the calabrese looks like, and I'll show you in a few weeks' time when they're ready to go in the ground. Okay, so a quick tour of the smaller greenhouse. As you can see, the broad beans have really shot up now, so they're all sort of coming through now really well. The larger plants that I planted last year, as you can see, are actually in flower now, so really they should go out, but I really don't think it's warm enough to put them out yet. In here we've got the standard onions. As you can see, they've germinated quite well now, and they're coming through, so I've taken the glass off those. Those are the spring onions at the back there. So what I'll be doing is sort of waiting for them to get to kind of that big, and then I'll be pulling them out in clumps and planting them out in the ground or in the greenhouse. In here we've got the kale. As you can see, there's a little bit of germination in there, but they're not doing too badly. Obviously they were only planted last week, but I'm just keeping the glass on those for now to keep them nice and warm. And all being well, they'll all start to germinate. Right, so that's that side of the greenhouse. Over this side we've still got the potatoes. They don't look overly well at the moment, to be honest with you. I have thrown a couple out and I think they got damaged in the frost the other week. I have got some backup potatoes that I can use if there's any problems, but I don't know if you see, like this one here for example, that's quite clearly damaged, and that one there so I'll be getting rid of those. What I may well do is to move these to the shed where they might be warmer. At the moment it's kind of sort of 12.5 degrees in here, which is not too bad, but if it just gets any colder, I'll move them into the shed where they'll be a lot warmer until the weather starts picking up. Now if the weather does get worse than it is today, even though it looks quite bright, we have had quite a few sort of snowstorms already today. It's not stuck, but I am. You can see the odd snowflake now out there if you look carefully. But it is really bitterly cold outside. So even though I'm maintaining a reasonable 12 degrees in the greenhouse, it may well drop tonight. So if we do get close to a frost again, what I'll do is I'll put the potatoes in the garage, where they'll be, or the shed where they'll be a lot better protected. Okay, just to quickly show you what's been going on. So I've cut down all of the herbs and that were here, sort of trimmed all those down. And what I will be doing is just putting a top dressing of some wood chippings over the top of there. The sage plant here, as you can see, it's looking a bit tired. What I have done is cut it back at the bottom because it was overthrowing the path. So if you're going to cut sage down, you need to do it in stages. Don't just cut it all down to the ground because you'll kill the plant. What you need to do is cut back some of what you want to be, some of the branches you want to cut back, let them start to grow again, and then cut the rest back. So do it in stages. Exactly the same way with rosemary. If you want to trim rosemary back, do it in stages. Don't go in there and cut it all the way back. What you want to do is do it in stages. This needs to be cut back, but unfortunately, as you can see, it's just starting to come into bud. It's starting to flower, and the bees love this time of year. So what I'm going to do is hang off a little bit and cut this back later in the year. Ideally, I would cut it back now, but because the bees love the flowers, I'm going to leave that for the bees to feast on, if you like. Obviously, you've seen the greenhouse being clean, so that's nice and ready to go now. The biggest enemy I've got now is getting that dry before before we get any cold weather. There is a strong chance we're going to get some cold weather this week, so that's why I've sort of chosen this day, which is nice and sunny. As you can see, we've got some nice sun up in the sky. That's hopefully going to dry that out. The one thing I am mainly concerned about is obviously the grapevine. I want to try and get that dry, so that's why I've got all the windows open, get that nicely vented, and then later tonight I'll come back up. Hopefully it'll be nice and dry at that point, and then I can shut the doors on that, and then that's all ready to go this year. This is obviously the asparagus bed, so I've cleaned out as much as I can here. I'm going to replace this wood very shortly along here and along the back there, take them bricks out, and then I'm going to put a dressing of chicken manure on here, and I'm also going to put some wood chip in there as well, just to mulch it down to stop any weeds from growing. I have got some annual weeds in here. As you can see, there's some dandelions and various bits and bobs down there, but I wanted to sort of get the greenhouse sort of sorted as much as I could do whilst we got this weather. So I'll dig out the weeds and stuff we've got there just with a little trowel, and then replace the wood round the bottom here, dress it with chicken manure on the top, and I'm going to try and do that in the next week or so before the asparagus starts to grow. The comfrey plants that are there, I've pulled out all of the old growth that was there last year, and what I will be doing is putting a bit of chicken manure on there just to protect that from the frost, because the frost has been affecting the leaves a little bit. So here we've got the chives, as you can see. There's a weed in there. The chives are starting to grow quite nicely. I don't need to do anything with those, just leave them to grow. I have been working on the raspberries. I've taken out a few more, but it's slow progress. I'm coming up as and when I've got the time to do it. But what I'm going to be doing here is cleaning the path off. You can see there's a reasonable amount of moss there. Clean that all off, clean all the weeds out from underneath, and then I'm going to dress this again with some chicken manure at the bottom of the raspberries, just to give them a bit of a boost, and then finish off trimming those ones at the end there, and then they'll be all ready to go. The espalier trees I do need to give a bit of attention to. I need to cut these sort of and tie runners down and stuff like that in the next couple of weeks before the before they start growing in earnest. I have managed to get some wood. I don't know if you can see this wood here, it's quite large pieces. I'm going to be using that later in the season to make some walking paths out of wood that I can just put down. Just some 4x5 joists basically. So what I'm going to be doing is putting 2 or 3 of those together in sort of 6-foot sections. So I'll cut this down a bit, and then I'll be able to use that as wooden paths to go over the plot between the rows of plants. Strawberries, what I need to do is get in there, and I have sort of started to clean out a little bit, but what I need to do is take these cages off, get in there, and then pull off all the old leaves and just sort of clean that up a little bit. Plenty of chicken manure in here. This is obviously where the potatoes are going to go, so what I need to do is I've just piled it up at the moment over there and over there. And what I'll be doing is sort of spreading that over and rotivating that into the ground for the potatoes. Down here, the kale really is starting to come to the end of the season now. I'm sorry if the wind's affecting the sound of the video. We have been cropping the kale, as you can see. The flower sprout plants at the end here haven't done very well with this weather at all. They were starting to sprout, as you can see. This one here is sprouting, but the other ones seem to have suffered a little bit. I think it's possibly a little bit too wet for them, and they seem to be really struggling. But anyway, we'll just have to see how they get on. But the kales, we've been picking at this every week, and we've had quite a lot of meals off this. Obviously, as soon as it gets to a certain point where they're not really shooting any longer, basically what I do is I put the entire plant, I pull it up roots and all into the chicken hut, and then the chickens basically strip that down and have all the leaves off it, and then what is remaining effectively goes into the recycling bin. What I don't do is compost any brassicas, because if you do get club root, you know, you're basically putting club root back into the ground with your compost. So what I tend to do is shred the stalks, and that goes into the compost too. But anything sort of the roots, so basically anything from kind of there down, that goes into the recycling. Dorothy, come on. Oh, right. Okay. In the second tunnel we've got the rhubarbs just about starting to come up. I don't know if you can see the little eyes starting to form. So I've not put any more stuff on. Obviously last year this had a load of wood chip and chicken manure on it, so I'm not going to put anything on it this year. I might put some wood chip up that far end there, but you know, it is getting quite deep now, so I want that to rot down a little bit. But the rhubarb is starting to come up. In this second tunnel here, I've got the row of Swedes, which has been a complete disaster, to be honest with you. These are the Swedes here. As you can see, they're just a waste of time. This is broken down a little bit, really. As you can see, the pipes come off. This was the I don't know if you can see the top there, but I need to fix this tunnel up. This is going to move pretty much to where that other one is in a few weeks' time, as soon as I've got the ground dug over. So the beans are going to be grown here this year. So as soon as this spinach and everything's finished, basically what I'm going to do is move this tunnel to where the other one is, or basically where the just on the other side of the rhubarb where the gourds were last year, and then the bigger tunnel's going to move further up the plot, so that'll open up this piece of ground here, and I'm going to be growing the beans and other various bits and bobs down here. But yeah, the spinach is starting to grow again, so I will be picking. I've got quite a few holes in. As you can see the caterpillars here, look at these things, woolly caterpillars. Unfortunately they tend to eat the leaves and that, but yeah, it's not looking brilliant in here, but that's what they look like. There are still some beetroot. I don't know if you can see there's some beetroot in there, so we'll probably finish that off this week. This end of the allotment, I don't know if you can see the water logging. It is quite waterlogged. You can see the water here. It is quite deep here, and the water just tends to collect here. So it all collects into a a tank under this box here. I've explained this in the past, but I haven't had a chance to come down here and drain it yet. Okay, and around here, as you can see, it's been really wet. We've had loads of flooding on the path. I'm sorry if the wind's blowing into the microphone. I'm not going to go up there, but I don't know if you can see all the water all here, right at the side of the allotments there. So we have got some land drains in here, in addition to the ones that I put in, but they're clearly not functioning, as you can see, all here and all up there. So basically we need to sort something out. Anyway, so if I dig down here, it's just going to be basically water, so I just can't get on the plot to dig at the minute. But as I say, that tunnel is going to come here, and then this tunnel's going to move up a little bit to where it was. Obviously with brassicas, you don't want to grow them in the same position really for 3 years, but because of the way I do things, I always grow the potatoes in the same place. So this tunnel is going to go here, where the onions and the parsnips were this year, and then that tunnel is going to go there where the gourds were. So they're going to move around, but obviously that tunnel there needs a bit of work on it. I need to stitch the material back together and also remake the steel poles inside it. So just got a few parsnips left. There's not many left here, so as soon as I've got those parsnips out there and add those, I can get this bit dug over, and then I can get that rotavated, and then I can move this tunnel this way, making room for that one to come this way. So then, you know, I can get them all lined up for this year. Then obviously this bit here was already dug when I took the potatoes out, so what I'm going to do is just spread the muck round, and then I can rotivate that in ready for the potatoes this year. So that's what the allotment looks like at the end of the first week in March. Okay, I can only apologise for the wind, but basically what I've done is I've replaced the wood up at the top there. I've put a really small amount of chicken manure on there. There's not a lot, there's literally just a slight amount. And then there's, on top of that, I've put some wood chip. The wood chip really is there for two reasons. One, well, obviously to put carbon into the ground, but it's there to hold down the chicken manure, because that could potentially be sort of blown away, because we have had quite a lot of wind up here in the last few weeks. I've put the wood in around the edges. You can see what I've done is I've put in metal sort of U-sections there and set the wood in between there. I've just got to take that screw off there, but this one here is actually bolted on. As you can see there's a bolt there and a bolt at the end. I did put that in before with wood, but obviously the wood rotted in the ground, so what I've done now is put some metal in around 18 inches into the ground, so that's really not going to go anywhere now. So that's all pressure treated wood, so I don't really need to paint that straight away, but what I will do later in the year is give that a lick of paint when I get some time. But all I've done with the asparagus, as I say, is put a small amount of manure on the top, just to keep the ground nice and fertile, and then just to weigh that down, I've put about half a bag of chippings on top of there. It may look a lot, but there's not that much on there. It's all, you know, as soon as that compacts down, it's probably less than half an inch of stuff on there, but at the moment it's all kind of fluffed up, so that's why it looks a lot. I've done exactly the same with the comfrey. I've put some muck on there, and also some wood chips on the top. Now, as I say, this will do three things. One, it'll make the ground more fertile. It'll also sort of protect the asparagus shoots as they come through, and also it'll suppress any weeds or anything like that comes through. With asparagus, you don't want the ground to be too wet, you want it to stay reasonably dry, so you don't want to put too much on there. The ground needs to be able to dry out, otherwise the asparagus roots will rot in the ground. But that's what the asparagus bed looks like now, after it's had a bit of attention. Okay, so as you can see, the asparagus trees really do need to be sort of tied in and sort of cut back a little bit. This is best done at this time of year before the plants really start to let the sap run through the plant. Now, as you can see, there are some shoots forming on the Justaberry bushes, and also I've also got some buds forming on the fruit trees. So really, this is my last opportunity now to start to cut things back Make sure that the ties that are on there at the moment aren't sort of too tight, so take any off that got too tight last year, and then to put some new ties on to hold these sort of branches down. If you leave it too long, basically they'll just get too stiff, then you won't be able to do anything with them. So basically I need to sort of tie all these back, so I'll just do that now and I'll show you what it looks like when I've finished it. Okay, so I've started to tie in the branches, as you can see, like that, and obviously these ones will also get tied in, so that will kind of go along like that and meet it. But anything that's sticking out, like obviously this one here, that's obviously come off this side shoot here, you've got to be reasonably ruthless and just cut straight through that with your secateurs. Anything that's like down here, for example, this here that's kind of running out, cut that right the way back, and you want to leave just a couple of buds on the end there, then that can go for to be shredded. So anything that's obviously growing incorrectly, like this one here example, just take that off at the node there, just below a bud. Obviously as you can see here, there's plenty here that needs to be cut out. All of this, basically this part here, all of that can come out like that, right the way down. So anything that's not growing as you need it, take it out, either tie it in or cut it out. You know, it will mean that you'll get less fruit this year, but you know, if you want to train the plants so that they're growing in a certain way, that's a sacrifice that you really have to take. Now this branch here, ideally that would go down sort of along this wire here at the back, so I'll try and train that in. But as I say, anything that's obviously sticking out like that, take it down as far as you can, leaving a sort of growing out, so you've got sort of 2 or 3 inches left on there, just like I did here last year with those. As you can see, I've taken those off. This one here, obviously that's between 2 wires, so that's not really going to go anywhere, so take that down to about there. That one can go down to there. So basically what you're doing is you're discouraging these from growing, and so what you want to do is so that the plant sends all of its energy into the bits that are growing in the right direction, and basically in sort of doing that, you're training the plant to grow along the wires exactly how you want it to. Any branches that are damaged, for example this one here, that's obviously got broken, just take that off, so you've got a sort of growing tip there, and obviously your fruit will form from there. As soon as you get as long as you want to, in other words, for example this one here, I've got to this point here, what I could potentially do, as that's halfway between 2 plants, I could potentially cut that off there. So these branches here, for example, they're going along. As soon as you get to the end of where you want to stop, you can potentially take that off like that there, and then obviously the plant will then start to sort of you know, sort of bush out and sort of, you know, develop the branches. One thing you do need to do is, if you've done like I have and you've used if you use raffia, which sort of decays over time, you don't really need to worry too much. But if you've got cable ties or this nylon twine that I've used, obviously that's not biodegradable, so they will eventually start to cut into the branches. So make sure that they're not cut into the branches. If they are, cut them off and then put another one on that's obviously looser, and then that should be your espalier sort of ready for the spring. So I'll finish these off, and then when I've got them finished in the next couple of days, I'll show you what they look like. Okay, so if you're planning to force rhubarb, now is the right time of year to do it. So as soon as your rhubarb's crowns have started to come up like this out of the ground, it's time to cover it up. Now basically, forcing rhubarb is basically when you put a bin or a bucket or an upturned bin, or what I've got here is 2 recycling bins, and all you need to do is put that over the rhubarb crowns like that, and basically what you're doing is you're starving the rhubarb of light, and what will happen is the rhubarb will then grow up inside the bins there, starved of light, and they'll grow a lot longer in there. The leaf won't develop, it'll all be stalk basically, because it's searching for the light, and as a result the rhubarb will be much pinker, sweeter, and much more tender, you know, less sort of sinewy, and you get much nicer rhubarb for making, you know, cooking with and all the rest of it. So, but the thing that you need to understand is, if you do that this time of year, what you want to do is only force a plant which hasn't been forced the year before. Don't try and do it to the same plant on multiple years, you know, consecutive years, because you will exhaust your plant and you know, the plant will suffer. So as soon as you have forced your rhubarb and you've picked it, you pick the pieces that you want. Obviously don't pick all of the rhubarb. I always recommend that you pick about 3/4 of the rhubarb and then leave the rest on the plant to basically to support the plant going through the rest of the year. Obviously you will get a second growth on rhubarb around September time, which will again you know, sort of feed the plant. But what you want to do this time of year, if you want to force rhubarb, now's the right time of year to do it. Get your bins over and you know, force your rhubarb, and then you can pick it, make your puddings with it and whatever else, and then as soon as you've finished forcing it, take the bins away, don't leave them on the rhubarb, take them off, and then basically let the plant recover for at least 12 months before you do it again. So, you know, next year put your bins in another location and force some rhubarb in another location, and then you know, you won't weaken the plant too much. I don't know if you know, but Britain is actually the largest effectively producer of rhubarb in the world. We produce something like 80 or 90% of the rhubarb throughout the world, and it's largely grown, I think, in Yorkshire, because we have the right, just the right growing conditions for rhubarb in the UK. So if you are in the UK or neighbouring countries, you know, don't pass up growing rhubarb, because it's so easy to grow in our environment, and it's such a nice crop, because basically you plant it and then every year it will produce you know, really nice stems and that for you to grow a whole manner of things with it. And you know, so you know, if you are in the UK environment, you know, do please try to grow rhubarb, because it is a good herb to grow. So I hope this episode was of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions you got below, and I'll always get back to you, and I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Love the Garden.